Hey everybody, it's great to be learning with you today remotely as we bring to a close our studies of the first chapter of Masechet Ta'anit and take a closer look at Mishnah Zayin, which continues much of the material that we began looking at together in the first 6 Mishnayot and then introduces some new concepts as well. Let's explore together. But first, a quick look back at some of the things that we've studied previously. We know that the ideal time to ask for rain is on the 7th of Cheshvan. That was the opinion of Rabban Gamliel. There was some debate about that, and in the end we side with Rabban Gamliel because he provided the maximum amount of time for travelers to return home after making the trip out to Yerushalayim to spend Sukkot at the Beit HaMikdash, a practice known as Aliyah L'Regel, which we explored before. And so to give people time to get back without getting rained out, which would make travel very difficult, we push the time to start asking for rain, Tein Tal Umatar Livracha, until the 7th of Cheshvan. And if no rain falls, we give a little bit of time, but by the 17th of Cheshvan, if rain still hasn't arrived, Torah scholars, the Yechidim, they begin to fast, and that is a series of 3 fasts, Monday, Thursday, and Monday, depending on when the fast falls out. So if the 17th of Cheshvan is on a Tuesday, it would be Thursday, Monday, Thursday. If the 17th of Cheshvan was on a Sunday, then it would just be a Monday, Thursday, and then the following Monday. And again, there aren't a lot of restrictions when it comes to this fast. You're allowed to eat the night before. The fast only begins the next morning. And most of the other restrictions that apply later on do not apply here. You're allowed to more or less maintain your regular routine. The only restrictions have to do with eating and drinking the morning of the fast itself. If, however, rain still has not arrived sometime later, it's about 10 days later, and now it's Rosh Chodesh Kislev, we are going to impose these restrictions on the entire community, and the entire public is going to join the Torah scholars in this public fasting process as well. And like before, they, like the Torah scholars, will fast a series of 3 fasts on a Monday, a Thursday, and a Monday, starting with Rosh Chodesh Kislev. But like the previous fast occasions, starting with the 17th of Cheshvan, there really are no major restrictions in place as far as regulating or changing the routine. Eating and drinking is still allowed the night before, and more or less everyday activities are still allowed and are not interrupted in any way. So that's what happens if no rain falls by Rosh Chodesh Kislev. It starts to get tricky once that series of fasts passes and there's still no rain. We now impose a second set of fasts on the public, including Torah scholars, and that's also a set of 3 fasts taking place on a Monday, Thursday, and Monday. But now we do impose restrictions on the regular routine. We don't allow the use of cosmetics or washing for pleasure or wearing leather shoes or other kinds of creative labor. And in addition, we lock the bathhouses. We restrict use to the public baths as a form of creating public awareness to make people aware of and cognizant of the need for change and perspective shifting in light of the challenges that the community is experiencing with the lack of rain. If that series of fasts passes and yet there's still no rain, we move to a 3rd series. Unlike the one before it, though, this 3rd series actually stretches over a period of 7 fasts taking place on Mondays and Thursdays. And now we introduce new restrictions like the blowing of the Chatzotzrot as a form of awakening us to change our ways and to focus on the matters at hand. We had a chance previously to learn about the Chatzotzrot. We lock the stores so that we limit people's ability to go about their everyday shopping routines. The stores are opened on Erev Shabbat, on Thursday night, just to allow people to buy items for Shabbat use, but otherwise we do impose those restrictions as a form of creating public awareness. And like before, there are restrictions that are placed on the use of cosmetics, washing for pleasure, wearing leather shoes, and other forms of creative labor. If after these 3 public series of fasts, a first set of 3, a second set of 3, and a third set of 7. In addition to the series of 3 that the Torah scholars did, and still no rain arrives, now we really do escalate the restrictions and impose harsher measures on the community. The Mishnah says the following: Avru v'lo natnu, if these 3 series of fasts go by, v'lo natnu, and the public is not answered with rain, mematin b'masa uvamatan, we limit the amount of trade that goes on, b'binyan uvenatiya, planting and building, erusin and nesuin, engagements in marriage, uv'she'elat shalom ben adam lachavero, and the greetings that are shared between people, kivnei adam hanazufim milifnei hamakom, like disgraced individuals before makom, before Hashem. Let's take a look at each of these individually and understand why these measures are imposed. The first is mamatin b'masa uvamatan. We decrease trade and other forms of commerce. When you think about it, that's one of the major signs of going about your routine, going about your business like it's any other day. So by decreasing trade and other forms of business operations, we make people deliberately shift their behaviors and start thinking about things differently. Same goes for mamatin b'binyan uvenatiya. We don't plant or build because those activities are usually pleasurable activities, and by not doing them, it forces us to accept the unusual and uncomfortable circumstances confronting us. However, there are some relaxations when it comes to these laws. You are allowed to build if it's your occupation, so no remodeling, no renovations, but if you are a builder and that's part of what you do, you can be the one to build it. You just can't hire someone to have your house remodeled or refurbished. And we're talking about in the times of the Mishnah. And when it comes to planting, we're talking about the kind of planting that people do for pleasure, not out of necessity. So if you're a farmer, you would be allowed to actually go about that kind of work, because it doesn't actually distract you from the circumstances that are at hand. Similarly, and this one's probably the easiest to understand, we don't allow people to get engaged or married during this period, and this period is roughly about 2 weeks when all is said and done, not months. It's about a few-week period. At this point, we're coming towards the end of the month of Adar and stretching into the month of Nisan. It's almost Pesach time, and we create a moratorium on engagements and marriages. You can't get married, you can't get engaged for obvious reasons. Those are happy occasions, and we want to keep the focus on the sad circumstances. And finally, we don't greet friends and acquaintances. This practice may be familiar to some of you on Tisha B'Av, where it's actually, according to Jewish law, forbidden to greet people. You're allowed to sort of give a head nod when you pass somebody, but you're not supposed to actually greet people. Those restrictions on Tisha B'Av last up until midday on Tisha B'Av itself. These restrictions are imposed throughout this time period when no rain arrives. We definitely are setting a tone of somberness, of sadness, and of seriousness. So to take a quick review of what we've learned, if rain has not arrived after the 13 fasts by individuals, that's the series of 3, a second series of 3, and then a series of 7, a third series of 7, for a total of 13 fasts, plus the other 3 that were undertaken by the Torah scholars. We do all kinds of new restrictions: decrease trade, don't plant or build for enjoyment, we don't get engaged or married, and we don't greet friends. All of this is designed to make us act like people in mourning. One thing you may notice, though, is that we don't continue to declare additional fasts on the public. Now, there's a limit, of course, to how much we can oppress people with harsh fasting. That, of course, only applies to the individuals in the community, but the individual Torah scholars, the elite, they have a duty and a responsibility to maintain this series of fasting, again, series of 3, Mondays and Thursdays, up until the end of Nisan, which is what the Mishnah says here at the end. And this is essentially where the first parak ends. We've taken a look at the ideal time to ask for rain, what happens if rain doesn't arrive, what are the protocols and procedures that go into place. How does that affect our everyday affairs? And fortunately, this is not a typical occurrence. Most of the time, when people did ask for rain to fall and were introspective and looked inward and tried to correct their behavior and reestablish a positive relationship with God, then rain did arrive. But this gives us some perspective on what happens when rain doesn't arrive after this final series of 7 fasts. Hope this gives you a little more understanding and clarity about the Mishnah and the Perek as a whole. And I'm looking forward to learning the rest of this Mishnah with you and alongside you when we return to class.